China remembers the contributions of former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who passed away today at the age of 100. Beijing officials have hailed Mr. Kissinger as an invaluable figure in building ties between the two economic superpowers. Chinese President Xi Jinping has sent his condolences to his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden.
基辛格博士是中国人民的老朋友、好朋友，是中美关系的开拓者和建设者。他长期关心和支持中美关系发展，先后100余次访华，为推动中美关系正常化做出历史性贡献。中国人民将铭记基辛格博士对中美关系投入的真挚感情和做出的重要贡献。
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida also paying tribute to Mr. Kissinger, expressing his deepest respect for the late diplomat's achievements.
元国務長官はこのおっしゃるように米中首脳会談、米中国交正常化など地域の平和と安定に大きな功績を残された方です。
Singapore's leaders have highlighted Dr. Kissinger's strong connection with the country, as well as with founding Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. President Tharman Shanmugaratnam notes that Dr. Kissinger and Mr. Lee had developed a deep regard for one another, starting from the late 1960s. President Tharman points that the former US Secretary of State's latest book, published last year, was a study of 6 people that he considered extraordinary leaders, and Mr. Lee was one of them. Foreign Affairs Minister Vivian Balakrishnan says that Singapore has lost a close friend and a consistent advocate. He shares that when they last met in New York 2 months ago, Dr. Kissinger said that he was an unqualified supporter of the country's autonomy and capacity that was established by his good friend, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. A story about the close bond between the two is perhaps best told by former ambassador to the US, Chan Heng-chi. She recalls what happened during Mr. Lee's final moments.
On the plane back to Washington, and he was flying over Central Asia, he had a premonition that Lee Kuan Yew would not last, So he wrote his obituary for Lee Kuan Yew, a tribute to Lee Kuan Yew, on the plane. He said the plane then touched down in London because it had to refuel. It was a private plane. And when he got down to the airport, he saw on the TV screen the announcement that Mr. Lee Kuan Yew had passed away. So he immediately decided then, against his wife's wishes, and Nancy Kissinger is so protective of Henry Kissinger, against his wife's wishes, that he would turn around and fly back to Singapore. The owner of the private plane allowed him, and so he flew to Singapore. And I had said to MFA, no matter what time Dr. Kissinger arrives, be it 3 a.m. or 2 a.m., 4 a.m., I'll go to the airport to meet him because, he's making such an effort. He's taken this great effort.
Born to a Jewish family in Germany in 1923, Henry Kissinger fled the Nazi government at the age of 15, moving to New York with his family. He rose to prominence in the 1960s, becoming the National Security Advisor to U.S. President Richard Nixon in 1968, and later Secretary of State as well. Kissinger wielded tremendous power and is credited with being the architect of the U.S. establishing diplomatic relations with China in the 1970s. Kissinger was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1973 for his work to end the Vietnam War, but like many things in Kissinger's life, that was controversial. Critics pointed to his previous involvement in expanding that conflict, as well as the U.S.'s secret bombing of Cambodia during the height of the Vietnam War, as evidence that Kissinger put what he thought were U.S. interests above all else, including human rights. That bombing in Cambodia led to the rise of the genocidal Khmer Rouge regime. His influence was felt around the globe, with his diplomatic approach shaping events in Africa, the Middle East, and South America, as well as Asia. In South America, his support for military coups against democratically elected governments in Chile and Argentina was, for his detractors, further evidence of Kissinger's questionable diplomatic approach. However, he remained an important figure right up until the end of his life through his consultancy and counseling U.S. politicians and many others. Just this summer, he visited Beijing and met with Chinese President Xi Jinping. While he leaves behind a complicated legacy, few people have had as big of an impact on the events that shaped the world. Ira Spitzer, CNA, San Francisco.